Hello and welcome back to another episode of Multifamily Forward presented by Mark Taylor. I am Adam Greco, and as always, our leader and president, Mr. John Carlson.
Good to see you, Adam.
It's
Great to be here this morning.
Always a privilege, always a privilege. We've got a great special guest,
We do.
Mr. Steve Terra from TerraLane Communities, and we're going to discuss how BTR, let's define what BTR is, another acronym.
Build to rent.
Build to rent, there we go. How BTR is reshaping multifamily living. John, how did MT even get involved with BTR?
Well, obviously we're students of the market, so we were, keenly aware of Next Metro and Avila and that product type and brand. In 2016, I was introduced to Todd Wood, and we had several conversations about his pathway forward, and also got to know Greg Hancock at that time from a construction side.
Mm-hmm.
And we decided to work together on Todd's first 7 lease-ups. So I believe we opened his first asset in Surprise, CTC Greenway, 132 units in, I think, Q4 of 2017. So it just really took off from there in terms of our penetration in the market. Word got out that, we were BTR experts, and it really took off from that standpoint. And we created, I think, a lot of positive movement in the BTR space. It was unknown. There was, a lot of things that people didn't understand, including prospects. I remember the first project, Greenway, we had 500 to 600 tours a month.
It's
which
amazing.
would blow Steve's mind away when he comes on the desk. But I think it was just an interesting time as people started to try to understand what that space looked like. And it certainly carved its way into, I used to say we just had really garden-style, mid-rise, high-rise.
Right.
But it's really the fourth quadrant now, and it's here to stay.
Another product style.
Absolutely.
Knowing how well it has been accepted with residents and within the multifamily industry, how many BTR assets does Mark Taylor manage today?
Well, today we have 21 lease-ups underway, and 13 of those are BTR SFR.
Love it. Did you say 21 lease-ups?
Yes.
That's amazing. That's fantastic. I love it.
You know this.
I know this. I'm just saying, shock value. So being that we do have Mr. Laterra here with us, how many TerraLane communities do we currently manage for?
We currently have 3 in lease-up, actually 1 just stabilized, TerraLane on Cotton, and we previously leased up 2 that he sold successfully.
It's beautiful.
Yes.
Beautiful.
And many more to come.
There we go. That's what we like to hear. How has BTR changed multifamily as far as the industry?
I don't want to oversimplify it, but if you think about quality of living experience, and you think about having a great product that feels like a home and no one's living above or below you, I mean, that's the heart of the success, in my opinion, of BTR. And if you incorporate great management, a backyard, doggy door, I mean, these things matter to folks. And I think it's created a nice, I'll say, soft landing for folks that are potentially looking to buy a home or be in a home. And it's been truly successful.
Well, I think we're going to learn a lot more about this product.
We should get the expert on.
Why don't we bring in Mr.
I'll stop
Steve
talking
Laterra?
now.
Does that sound good?
That sounds great.
All right. Well, we're thrilled to have Mr. Steve Laterra, the CEO of TerraLane Communities. Steve, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks, Adam.
I'm going to say this just because it's fun, and it's my dad joke. You do have the best haircut in the studio right now.
I've heard that. Yeah. You're not the only one, actually.
Well,
I was
thank
at the
you.
gym yesterday, and there was 5 of us.
See that?
5 of us.
We talked previously via email on trying to convince John to do the same.
We had that conversation, and apparently it didn't stick.
No, I guess we don't have that much influence yet.
Not yet.
I've always enjoyed the gold medal, but in this case, I'm okay to be bronze.
Yeah.
Steve, before we dive in, how about we ask a couple questions, let the audience get to know you a little bit?
Sure.
Sound great?
Sounds
All
good.
right, so this is one of my favorite ones that we're going to ask. So if you could have dinner with one person, that person could be dead or alive. Let me preface that it can't be a spouse or family member. Who would that person be?
It's a really good question, and there's so many ways I could take this answer. But my perspective is I like to have my mind blown
Yeah.
by people who have very different viewpoints. So I would go to somebody like Jesus Christ or Albert Einstein or somebody. The problem with Albert Einstein is I wouldn't understand what he's saying, right? So that would be the only problem.
Yeah.
But that would be my answer. Somebody who would blow my mind in a very different way, make me think differently.
Love it. Love it. The next question, sorry. What is your all-time favorite movie?
Oh, it's easy. Shawshank Redemption, without question.
I got to ask you this question. What is your all-time favorite movie?
I always say that, there's movies that people will say it's their favorite movie.
Yeah.
But Shawshank Redemption, for me, if it's on TV,
Can't
I have
turn
a
it
very hard time turning it off.
You can't turn it off.
I just can't turn it off. Andy Dufresne.
But you also can't have the same answer that I do.
So that's fair. So
put you on the spot.
So even though this isn't the case, I think collectively, like if you look at all of the cinematography, the writing, the storyline, American Beauty.
American Beauty.
Wow.
Yeah.
Great answer.
I'm going to answer even though you guys didn't
we're
ask
coming
me.
your way.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
I'm going to say it. Rocky 2.
Rocky 2.
Rocky 2.
Wow.
Laugh as much as you want, but that is absolutely the underdog story best underdog story in my opinion, and just been watching it ever since I was young.
I assume The Godfather or The Untouchables. I did not think you were going to go sequel during Sly Stallone.
It's Rocky 2, hands down. Hands down. Steve, if there is one thing about you that people wouldn't expect, what would that be?
That I was for several years a competitive powerlifter.
No, see, I didn't even know that.
So I have to ask now. So what was your moment? Like I lifted this, like I hit peak performance.
So that's a fair question. So there's lifting in the gym and then there's lifting in competitions, and they're very different experiences. So my best moment ever in a competition, I weighed 150 pounds and deadlifted 457 pounds.
Wow.
That still, I think, stands as a record.
Wow.
Yeah. But in the gym, I always had a goal to deadlift 500 pounds. I did it once. I put the weight down. The first thing in my head is I will never do that again. And I haven't, nor will I.
Yeah.
But it was a great experience.
That's amazing. That is amazing. Well, Steve, we're going to dive in. We're going to discuss, of course, build to rent, how it's changed our industry. I think it's important to know. I mean, of course, you being the CEO of TerraLane Communities, this is not where you started as far as being in the build to rent space.
Right.
I did a little research, and you were the former managing director of Myers Research.
Yes.
And you analyzed the horizontal apartment opportunities throughout the entire U.S. for home builders.
Correct. And in fact, it's funny because in 2015, Todd Wood came to us and said, "Hey, I've got this concept. I'm going to build the next generation of what Next Metro was doing."
Right.
And he did, right? But he had studied the market and through our help in Arizona and then nationally. So I got the benefit of learning from him and people like John. So it was a real great experience for me. And then next thing you know, I'm working with others who are doing this. And kind of a fun story, your neighbor here, when I took this job at TerraLane, or created this company, I was working a lot with Richard Felger at Empire and his Build for Rent. And he had said to me, calls me, and he goes, "Let me make sure I understand this. You know where every one of our projects are. You know all of our strategies. You know everything about our business. And now you're my competitor." And I said, "Yeah, right." Because if you know Richard, it could go either way after
Coffee
that.
soon?
Yeah. And he was like, he paused and he said, "Okay, we're going to be friendly competitors." And we are. We still talk now and regularly about, strategy and what's going on in our respective portfolios. It's a very collegial business, shockingly.
Yeah.
The development community, I mean, I learn as much from my competitors as I do from our customers.
As we all should, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Tell us a little bit about your investor strategy.
So the investor strategy is constantly evolving. When we started, it was very hard to get any of these financed unless you had a tremendous checkbook on your own, such as Todd. But we didn't. And so we were able to partner with a high net worth individual out of California who did step up on our behalf and provided a lot of the equity. We were able to arrange debt back then because debt was readily available. But when you're working with high net worth individuals, they have a tendency to do whatever they want because they
Right.
have a lot of money. And so that particular investor decided not to continue with the program after building the first 3. So we went back to New York, and once we had proven our business, we were able to raise some institutional capital. Institutional capital is great, except when they start reading headlines about water in Phoenix and things of that nature that may or may not be true, but certainly are, have a scare tactic to them.
Sure.
So they tended to retreat, which is where we are right now. Our institutional partners are a little bit on pause for the time being. So we're trying to morph our strategy and find more permanent sources of capital where we can perhaps retain these assets for the long term. I mean, we ultimately would like to be in the business of owning these as opposed to being a merchant builder. And most of our brethren in this space to this point have been merchant builders.
Right.
And I think that's changing.
Good. What do you feel sets BTR, the BTR product space, separates that from all the different products in regards to amenities, features of each of your properties, each of your assets?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think one of the things that BTR has been able to do is attract what do you call a premium renter. And what I mean by that is that's not necessarily a renter who is living paycheck to paycheck or, has to be in a particular area. These people want to be in these communities. They like the benefit of having no surrounding neighbors. They like
It's a
having
nice
a
feature.
little outdoor space on their own more than they require a barista in the common area, right? There are certainly those that want that, and that's a different type of renter than what we're getting. We're getting renters that appreciate the privacy, the quiet space, the ability to work from home without, some guy playing Led Zeppelin above you at 3 a.m.
Right.
That's the kind of
Great
renter
choice,
we're
though.
getting. For sure. I could have gone a lot of directions with that too. But anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you were kind of alluding to a specific demographic.
Yeah.
We get a lot of questions. It's just families that live in BTR type properties. What are you seeing as far as the BTR space? What kind of demographic are they attracting?
So I think John earlier said that BTR is kind of now the 4th component of the rental housing business. And I think he's right.
Here to stay.
But within BTR, I think there are subcomponents. There are single family homes for rent in a specific community.
Sure.
There's certainly the single family rental program, but let's just set that aside for now because that's more of a scattered business. There's townhome type, multi-story in some cases, and then there's our mostly single story type product, right? So what we tend to do is we tend to build 1 and 2 bedroom units, which is targeting 2 profiles primarily. It's kind of a premium millennial renter who wants to be near transportation, wants to be near their job,
Right.
and wants to be near services, right?
Yeah.
And the other side is a component of these move down empty nesters that are like sick of the single family home and all the obligations that come with
It's
it.
tough being a homeowner.
It is. And they just want somebody else to take care of it, but they still want the single family lifestyle. So we think those are the 2 primary demographics. However, let me add a caveat. And I'm sure you're going to ask about the future of this business.
Yeah.
As we sort of look to the future, we're trying to get additional products, which could include townhomes and single family homes for rent and other types, including multiple bedrooms. So then we would be getting family renters.
Great.
So the tenant
Great.
profile will move over time.
John, I'm going to ask you a question before I flip
Hang
another
on.
one.
I would answer
Please.
that question if
Yeah.
Mr. Zanman was here from Zona Law. I'd say anyone that qualifies would be my demographic.
That's
Just so
a
you know.
great
Yeah,
answer.
Yeah, there we go.
Great answer. Perfect. Before I ask another question to Steve here about the BTR space, we probably need to mention that there are a couple other acronyms. We have BTR, BFR, and then SFR. Do you have a way to define those between each other?
It goes back and forth. I'd say if you look at the majority nomenclature conversations, SFR would be more of a BB living townhome 3 and 4 bedroom. BTR maybe refers to the cottages, individual homes, the TerraLane type products. So
I'd also add this SFR probably includes where this business really started, which was in Phoenix, right? In 2010 or 11,
Right.
12, when finally the big money sources said, well, I can buy a house for 50% of the cost to replace it, and I can rent it, earn a current yield, and then ultimately sell it. And they aggregate these portfolios, but they were disparate locations. They weren't in a community.
Right.
I think SFR also includes that.
Good point. You just mentioned that, the BTR space pretty much started here in Arizona. What are you seeing on a national level? Has the popularity caught on?
Yes, it certainly has. I mean, I think people understand once they see the product and have experienced what it would be like to live there, that this is here to stay, as you guys had mentioned. So the fact that we happen to start here in Arizona doesn't mean it's not going to translate into Texas. It already is.
Right.
And we're in the process of building in Texas right now, so we're excited about that market as well. But, Charlotte, Central Florida, there's a lot of markets out there that this product has now been tested and successfully tested.
I've got a question for both of you. I'm going to kind of rephrase it a little bit
Sure.
if you're up for it, okay? So there are always going to be unique challenges with different product styles, right? Steve, to you, do you see any challenges or anything that stands out as far as development construction costs when it comes to developing a BTR product?
Well, certainly. I mean, if you were to read the headlines right now, the first thing you'd read is the cost to build one of these horizontal apartment communities exceeds the value at stabilization.
Okay.
So how do you make that make sense, right?
Yeah.
So that is certainly a challenge. What's going to give? Our construction costs going to come down measurably. We thought they would. They're kind of sticky on the high side, particularly on the horizontal. One of the big challenges of our product is that the horizontal work is very different than a traditional multifamily and very different than a traditional single family. So it's a blend of the two, and it takes a bit of expertise to understand how to do the horizontal work. The vertical work is quite simple relative to home building because there's no options, there's no upgrades. It's the same unit stamped over and over again. So that component of it, I think we're going to see some cost relief in, particularly
Right.
in the lumber side.
Okay.
But is it going to be enough to generate an attractive return to make these communities continue to get built? And the answer right now, I think, is not yet. So does that mean the market value of these communities will change? I think yes, because there still is a lot of money on the sidelines looking for good quality product, which offers a successful return.
Right.
And it's not finding a home. So right now they're looking for 7 yields or above, and those aren't available. So I think the capital markets are going to have to get a little more realistic. And negative leverage, which everybody keeps talking about as the big bugaboo,
Yeah.
it's really not. It's really not. Ultimately, what you do is you put financing in place today and you'll refinance in three years or whenever attractive rates come back.
Great information. John, I'm gonna flip this to you a little bit differently on the
Sure.
operational side. We get this question a lot from consulting. How does BTR SFR operationally, do you see different expenses, anything different than normal garden, mid-rise, high-rise?
Today, if you look at the expense ratio, it's very similar to a traditional multifamily. I think the question that is unknown is what does it look like in 15, 20, 25 years?
Right.
It just hasn't been around that long. So if you think about every unit has 4 exterior walls, 1 roof, those things could be a CapEx addition at some point. I don't know. I mean, it's unknown at this point. Operationally, from an expense rate, it's really the same. I think your marketing slightly different because you do have as Steve alluded to, millennial plus, slightly different demographic.
Right.
But overall, it's relatively the same.
It's good. I think anyone that is involved with Arizona as far as in the multifamily industry knows that we are cresting in supply right now with a number of units, close to 47,000 units under construction right now. Steve, do you see a challenge in the BTR space with new single-family home builders coming into the BTR SFR space? Do you see a challenge arising in the future?
I see an enormous headline challenge right now.
Yeah.
Practically, I'm not sure the challenge is quite as significant as you might read in the headlines. And here's what I mean by that. We build a suburban product. We're not urban core. So the fact that there might be 10 or 12,000 high-rise units coming online, and I don't know if that's the right number. I'm just making one up.
Arbitrarily.
That has less significance on me than neighboring communities near me.
Right.
And then there's the other component, which because it's a suburban product and we need to be near jobs and transportation, there is a fairly defined area where this product works very well. Then there's the people that came in and said, well, the land has gotten too expensive there, so why don't I just go out to the next
A little bit further.
piece of land, which is now much cheaper. But the problem is it doesn't have the components the tenants want.
Right.
So I think you're going to see a lot of supply coming in areas where people don't want to rent. And so I think you're going to start seeing some real challenges in those areas, pricing-wise and the like. How will that impact our areas? Again, headline risk mostly. Will it have an influence on our pricing and our leasing? Maybe, but I don't see a lot of supply coming in the areas we are. It's coming in other areas or in other product types.
Understood.
You may have a different idea.
John, I was going to say, yeah, I pose the same question to you.
Well, you're never bigger than the market. So, supply side pressure will matter through really 2025.
Right.
As we work through this construction pipeline. I think the question is, are we resilient enough as a marketplace to handle this? And it's really about jobs. So will we continue to create enough jobs to create that demand? We know exactly what the ratio is. If we think about the macro environment, you think about the potential soft landing and the Fed talk, the narrative, I'm concerned about that temporarily. I think long-term, we're in better position. And what I mean by that, two things. One, we've peaked in permits for single family. That peaked in 2021. We've peaked in permits for multifamily. That was Q1 of this year. So we're going to work through that supply. There's going to be some temporary pain or near term. So the question is really long term. So let's look at 2027 and beyond. You have a Phoenix metro market from I'll say municipality, city council, city staffer perspective.
Yeah.
They're mostly anti-apartments. They have apartment fatigue. They've, God bless them, they've done a nice job of working with, I think, minimal staff, despite the cresting of all of these units. So sure. I think they've been frustrated with the amount of work they've had to do. But my concern is, there's a lot of concern around getting financing today and getting debt.
Yeah.
So, deals take 2 to 4 years, depending on, when
That's
you
right.
land that piece of dirt, when you start construction, when you get financing, all of those things. So I think we're going to have some trouble from a really, I'll just say it this way. We're not going to have enough units for our housing demand in 2027, 28, 29, if this continues long term.
Yeah.
So there's got to be a calibration of sorts with these municipalities and developers to understand, hey, we're all trying to create housing.
Right.
So let's do this together. Let's make this as efficient as possible. Every day matters in the development world, so we have to be focused on that. So back to my point, near-term pressure, long-term we have to find some more solutions for housing, which is a concern.
And you are mentioning long-term. I mean, we're talking right now 2 to 4, maybe 5 years out. Let's talk even further out, 5 to 10 years from now. Right now, we all know it's very difficult to purchase a home, especially with the rise in interest rates, right? I'm one of those individuals. This bodes well for our industry, though, especially in the BTR space. Where do you both see as far as long-term, 5 to 10 years? Do we see any other obstacles that might affect the BTR space?
Well, I think you're right on. I think this condition we're in with the cost of financing and the lack of supply. I mean, builders are starting to turn back on now, but they were turned off for quite some time.
Exactly.
To John's point, and that's going to create a gap in the market. And as we continue to create more jobs here, and that means demand for housing, and we don't have it, unfortunately, that means prices are going to go up. And when prices go up and the cost of financing goes up, well, it's going to create a lot more renters. And I think the benefits of a single-family lifestyle in a build-for-rent or build-to-rent community are going to be very persistent. And I think you're going to find that the leasing tends to be strong and the tenants tend to be sticky in our space. 5 to 10 years, I mean, I've given up projecting.
It's tough to do, isn't it?
In 10 years, if I'm still working, I've done
Everyone
something
seems
wrun.
to keep asking that question.
I've been
though.
doing
It's a common
something
question.
yeah.
What's going to happen in 5 to 10 years?
But it's a fair point because we have to plan for that. And it's funny, when I worked in Los Angeles, I worked with a company called the Japan Leasing Company, which was a 300-and-something-year-old company, and they had 100-year business plans. And
It's amazing.
I couldn't fathom it.
Yeah.
However, when you think about it, it's pure genius. We have to think that way.
John, anything different?
I think, we've done a lot of things successfully post-GFC. So what I mean by that is if you think about how we position the state, we've positioned Phoenix Metro. I give a lot of credit to Michael Crow with ASU and really the redevelopment, the resurgence of downtown. I think there's a lot of opportunity from a pro-growth job perspective. Phoenix and Arizona collectively are open for business.
Right.
Sandra Watson, Chris Camacho, and others, going back to Doug Ducey, tremendous job of being salesmen for the state. I mean, they did a nice job in inducing a lot of attraction. TSMC, Intel, being the barbells of that manufacturing boom. I mean, I don't know that we really understand the full impact of $40 billion from one company in one part of the valley.
Yeah.
Another $20 billion in the Southeast Valley, the 85 plus suppliers behind them, and then all of the ancillary businesses it will create in jobs. So, that manufacturing boom hasn't happened. We track jobs as closely as anybody. And I just think that if you fast forward to probably 2025, when TSMC is starting to release their first 5 nanometer chips, then 3 nanometer, Intel's chasing them. Intel's opening up their playbook in terms of starting to manufacture for others. So I just think the manufacturing revolution has started, but it isn't here yet. So that translates into what? A lot of great jobs, a lot of high-paying jobs. And if we don't have the right housing, that's going to deter future businesses.
100%.
So that's my concern, right? We're turning down jobs because of that.
Yeah.
That was one of the number one reasons that we were open for business, and employers saying, hey, sign me up for Arizona. Lots of housing, great market, great weather, all of these things. So that's my concern long term.
Makes sense. I have one more question for both of you. We were talking about CTC, Christopher Todd, Next Metro, those Generation 1, Generation 2 properties, not as heavily amenitized as what we're seeing now, especially on your assets. In my opinion, your assets are highly amenitized. Do you see that continuing to grow? I mean, what other amenities could be added to a property like yours?
Well, it's really tenant-based, right? So what we try to do is we try to address the tenant demand. So, for example, we have dog parks, right? That's a great idea because we also have dog doors and a high proponent of dog owners. And so that's something that they would want. Now, back to my question about, do we need a great big clubhouse with a barista? Well, that's not been of significant demand.
Yeah.
So I think we're, still experimenting with what it means. We have fitness centers. We don't have full-blown gyms. So we have reasonably sized units that seem to be adequately used, not overused, not underused. So right now we seem to be meeting tenant demand. Where will it go? It seems like the pool is a must, right? You have to have a pool.
And not a little play pool.
Correct.
Yeah.
Because we do get kids, shockingly, in our communities. I've known now 2 different tenants, women with 3 children living in our communities. And of course, that's in a 2-bedroom unit, which
could be a little tough.
People are bunking up, right?
Yeah.
But that's a statement to the quality of or the desire to have a single family lifestyle, right? And the quality of the amenities. So I don't think it's going to result in a race to amenities as the multifamily business did for a while. So I think for right now, we're in a pretty good place, but we're, as we move to new geographies and new states and the tenant demand is different, we'll morph our strategy.
John, Steve, of course, is mentioning dog doors, dog parks, what the resident demand is. We survey our residents continuously. We see a higher tick in pet owners when it comes to BTR than in just traditional garden.
Yeah, that's right. 61% of our BTR units have pets versus 40%.
Which is high.
Right.
That's pretty high.
Doggy door and backyard, it's a
must.
no-brainer.
Great.
It's a must.
It's the new kid.
I love it.
It's the new kid.
Absolutely.
Funny story. I remember having, I'll say, a verbal arm wrestling contest with Kerry Martz and Todd Wood years ago. And it wasn't that we had all the answers, but we really believed strongly a doggy door would matter. You're going to have these great backyards, 8 to 15 foot. Let's figure that out. The conversation was also with Greg Hancock and his team.
Oh, sure.
And, we came to the conclusion we should try it. Let's put it in the first 2 deals, and it was a home run. So I know we've continued forward, and obviously with plans and other great partners like Steve, it makes all the sense in the world.
That's fantastic. Steve, I just want to say thank you. I can't say thank you enough for sitting here with us, just for constantly educating us. Our partnership, it just means the world to us. Really want to say thank you.
Well, and I thank you guys because I learned more from you and from what you guys have done than anybody else, including my competitors. You guys are my number one source of information.
Thank you.
I'm always impressed with how Mark Taylor analyzes the market, especially the way you do it, John. It's pretty impressive. So
that means a lot becoming, you coming from Myers Research, because I've always held them in high regard. So,
John, we close out with this question every episode, and you've had a different answer every single time, which is great. What are you most grateful for today?
I mean, I have a great deal of things to be thankful for. And just sitting through this podcast, I was thinking about the great development partners I've had, and been introduced to over the years. And I just think it's been tremendous for me in terms of learning. And, if you look at, the great Jordan Peterson, and he'll talk about in his Rule 12 of his last book, never underestimate what you can learn from the person sitting across from you. And I am eyes wide open, ears wide open when I talk to guys like Steve and others. So I'm grateful that we've had a chance to work together this long, and hopefully
Me too.
we'll do it for many years to come.
So now I have to come up with a different answer. If you're going to ask
sorry.
me, right?
Yeah, putting you on the spot.
But I am grateful for the industry, and what I mean by that is it's a small budding industry with some really, I think, talented operators, and I'm grateful for the way they view this business. They don't view it as a highly cutthroat competitive business. They view it as something that if we're all successful together, the industry will grow. And so that is certainly something I'm grateful for. I had a different answer when I first thought about this question, which was being grateful is typically something that you don't think of as top of mind. So it means you have to do a little rewind and think, what should I be grateful for? What am I grateful for that I typically don't think I should be grateful for? And so I was mountain bike riding last weekend. I tweaked my back, and I've been walking around like an old man as a result. So I am very grateful for my health as it comes back, because if you don't have that, literally nothing else matters.
Interesting that this guy right here power lifted 500 pounds,
It's still,
but tweaked his back.
Tweaked it.
Oh,
And by the way, I
unbelievable.
was riding
You
on
never
a
know.
flat surface doing absolutely nothing, because I do crazy stuff now and again, but I was just going straight.
Mine
It just
happens when
said,
I'm putting my
it says
socks
you're-
on.
you're
That's how
old.
simple. Yeah.
My body said, you're old,
We'll-
and I'm going
We'll
to tell
talk
you
about that
you're
after the
old.
podcast.
Yeah, exactly.
That's embarrassing.
Exactly. I'm going to say what I'm most grateful for is that I have a similar shine that you do, and we just look like just two handsome men.
Yes.
Just two handsome men.
Yes.
Sorry, John.
This might, people will be perusing through, looking at podcasts and Spotify.
Yes.
They'll think we got Rogan, and
Yeah.
we're going to go to 10 million views.
Yeah. Yep.
Steve, again,
Could happen.
can't say thank you enough. We really appreciate
Adam.
you spending the time with us. Please join us again for another episode. Wanted to, again, say thank you to Mr. Steve Laterra, CEO of TerraLane Communities. And thank you for joining us for another episode of Multifamily Forward, presented by Mark Taylor Residential.